Hey guys, it's Sukiyomi here today, and I'm going to be talking about Barou versus Shidou in a swapped roles comparison. I've already done a video on how they fare against each other in every round in BlueLock, so if you want to check that out, please do. And also join my Discord to leave suggestions like this one. This one was suggested by Bila. I don't even know how to pronounce the last part, but in his Discord he's called I Don't Know Myself, so thank you for the suggestion. Now let's get on to the video. Now first we're going to be talking about Barou and Shidou's role, because that is way more easier to talk about, as Barou would have scored way more goals with less competition. I'm assuming we do not know who was in Shidou's stratum, so I'm assuming Barou would score even more goals than he originally did, which was 10. But that's a kind of a conspiracy, because he did not score all the 5 goals in the first match, and Team X only scored 10 goals, which meant that Barou did not score 10 goals. I don't know why the author put that. Maybe to hype us up. Who knows? Anyway, now in Shidou's being in Barou's stratum, here's where things change. I just remembered that Shidou, even though he's an offensive beast, he's not a defensive beast. Even though, like Karasu stated in chapter like 98 or 97, that Shidou's feats kind of dimmer down when it comes to defense, so that means that he wouldn't have been able to stop the shot. If Barou couldn't stop it, I don't think Shidou would have. And plus, Isagi passed it to Kunigami, who was way out of range, so I don't think Shidou would have jumped to save it when he was marking Isagi. So it would have been 5-1, but yeah, it would have probably been worse than 5-1 if I'm being honest. It would have been probably like 10-1. That's how bad it would have been. And plus, for the sake of plot armor Goat Sagi, I need Team Z to score a goal, even though Shidou would have probably stopped it. Because if they don't score here, they die in this BlueLock campaign. Now, the next game they undergo in Team X is the game against Team W, the Waninama brothers, and this game would have been closer, as it was 4-1 originally, but here in this timeline I believe it would have been like 3-4. I still believe if they double teamed or like omni-teamed Shidou, that the rest of the team wouldn't have done anything, as shown. As long as the rest of the team guards Shidou and the Waninama brothers are tag teaming the rest of the team, I think they would have been fine surviving this game, as Shidou cannot carry a team alone. Even though he's very good, the Waninama brothers were able to beat Barou, who was alone, so that's a testament to their feat. And if it wasn't for the fact that Reo got Zantetsu and Nagi to coordinate with him, they would have not beat him. Now, in the third match, here's the major flaw. The game against Team Y was very close, 3-4, and with Nico only surviving because Barou's a solo weapon. With the fact that Shidou is more of a team player, he would have made more reasonable plays, and Shidou's basically offensive killing spatial awareness would have been way too much for Nico to handle, as it took Isagi up to the third selection to understand, and people like Nanase could never understand Win and Shidou even in the third selection. So for someone like Nico to understand him this early on, hell no. Now, we also have to deal with the fact that he faces Nagi in the next round. Something we've never really seen is a Nagi and Shidou interaction. So this match would start off hot, as I believe Team X did start in the original manga. So Shidou would be pacing, only to have Zantetsu and Reo try to jump him. But similar to Barou, he has this thing where he can accelerate his charge. It's only when he's on offense though, he cannot do this on defense. So he will be charging, and then it will take a bunch of players to try and stop him. Shidou would then make a basically spinning kick, the similar way he scored the third goal for this first selection when it was him and Isagi and Rin to score the first goal. And then Reo and Zantetsu would have to formulate a devastating duel, as Reo would be using his dribbling skills to try and distract Shidou for a bit, just to pass it to Zantetsu, who will use his full speed to get himself a goal to make it 1-1. This game is going to be dangerous. Then they would try again. The duo of Zantetsu and Reo would really be trying to pressure him. They would ask Nagi for help. So when Shidou brings the ball to the air or tries to pass it to a teammate, that's when it would be Nagi's call to intercept. That would be the plan for Reo and Zantetsu to try and press. And when they finally get a press and pressure Shidou for him to try and pass to a teammate, they would definitely have Nagi to intercept. And then Nagi would start a triangle play with Rail and Zantetsu, as Nagi wouldn't really want to score goals. And this would lead to Rail scoring his first goal of the match. And then they would try the similar pattern again, but Shido would definitely change things up as he would try to use an aerial move. But here's where Nagi's aerial trapping abilities come into play, as he would trap the ball and get it to Rail, and they would do another counterattack. This would really impress Shido, and Rail would score another goal, making it 3-1. And then all of a sudden, Shido would just shoot from the start, similar to Rin and Barou, but it would go to no avail. And then it would go to another counterattack. Nagi, Rail, and Zantetsu. And then Shido would be barking at Nagi at why he isn't doing anything. He would say, let me see more of it. So Nagi would get pressurized. I don't know if he would use mental talk compared to Barou, as Barou was really more of a mental phase than him. But I think Nagi would take a simple shot just to score, as Rail would see that and make Nagi challenge Shido, as Nagi, his offensive speed is better than Shido's defensive speed, leading it to be 4-1. And then Shido, he would do like a pass it to his players, and then he would make them set him up, and then he would just tell them to like kick it as high as you can, and Shido would definitely score a massive, insane bicycle kick, as in their penalty box, he is the king there. It would be 4-2. And then we wouldn't have that Nagi explosive stage where he trapped the ball and then scored a massive goal against him, because Shido is, first of all, not a mental person to really go in your head, so Nagi wouldn't have been riled up in this game. Which kind of sucks, because Nagi wouldn't have scored an epic goal, which means that Shido would have figured out a way to try and counter them, but to no avail. Even if he did score a third goal in this match, it would have been too late, as when Nagi did score the fifth goal, that was basically the end of the match. So I think the match would have ended 4-3, but if there was additional time, Shido would have caught up to equalize the game. So this leaves Team X with a total of 6 points, and that is not looking good, because that means in the original timeline, Team Z would also have to get the 7 points, and this would mean that. And after that game against Nagi, we also have to talk about an interaction that happens after, which is Shido and Isagi, where Isagi tries to find his type of weapon, because Ego gives them the talk after Kuon scored a hat trick and Chigiri equalized the game winner against Team W, game saver. So basically, Ego gives the talk about how you need to duplicate goals, which means you need a weapon. And Isagi was looking for a weapon, and that's where he meets Barou in the original timeline. Shido would have been more than happy to use him as a pet. He wouldn't have tried as hard as Barou has, because Barou would have been scoring, but Shido would have just been flexing. And I feel like it would have taken more time, because Shido does not always go for the same direct 29-meter shot that Barou does. Barou always replicates his shot. Shido can just do anything he wants, so it would have been a bit harder for Isagi to adapt, but I do believe he would have conquered something out of that learning, because Isagi is a freaking genius. Now heading into the second selection, here's where things change for the worse. In this game against Naohaya and Shido, because we have to keep it to the original timeline, Shido and Naohaya would decimate Isagi and Nagi, as Shido would have already been used to both of them, and the only chance Isagi and Nagi has is if they do not mess up any play. But with Naohaya being there, they would have messed up a few plays, just like how Naohaya intercepted for Barou to score. And Shido wouldn't have messed around and missed the shots that Barou missed, which meant that they would have scored 5 goals way quicker, to the fact that I don't even think Isagi would have noticed on Naohaya using blind spots until he got to the wild card. And speaking of the wild card, yeah, Shido's taking Nagi. With the fact that he can trap the ball, and he would have been scoring more goals than Isagi in that match, which I think they would have scored 3 goals at best, they would have definitely taken them. Because if Kunigami and Rail, who were probably a better duo before Isagi learned blind spots, couldn't even score 3 goals, because the way Shido explains it, he was just a bit flashier than you. So at best, they scored 3 goals, meaning Rail had 2 and Kunigami must have had 1, or it was probably 5-0, so he just said who made better plays. It was either 5-1, 5-3, or 5-0 for Shido against Rail and Kunigami, which means Bye bye Isagi, go to the wild card. And speaking of that, that means Kunigami, Reo, and Chigiri never get to see Isagi in this timeline. Which means Bao and Igaguri never meet them because... Actually, yeah, they will meet them because Shido, Nagi, and Naohaya will meet Kunigami, Reo, and Chigiri, and this would be an insane matchup. I am not gonna go over this play by play, but basically the fact that Nagi knows Reo, which saved their match against in the real timeline, as Nagi knew what Reo would have done and Isagi's expertise. Shido wouldn't have been like a Bao where they would have had to miss up their first few plays because Bao was just being a B, which led to their early goals of Kunigami, Reo, and Chigiri. This meant that the match would have finished way earlier and way quicker with probably a 5-3 deficit, leading to Shido taking Chigiri as his speed would have been the most explosive and impressive thing to them, which meant that since they don't, Nagi is in control of this team, as I think Shido would have been the team leader since he has the most aggression and would have probably beat up anyone who tried to take charge. He wouldn't face Rin because he wouldn't care about Rin at the time, and he wouldn't have known Rin until way later in the story, which means that they probably pick up a 5th random nobody and call it a day. Meaning that Rin, Bachira, Ryu, and Tokimitsu have to pick up some random nobody too, which would have been bad for Rin's development, as Rin really needed Isagi to push him in that last match that they played in the second selection. Which meant that Rin wouldn't have been able to score a goal because it took Isagi's distraction for him to use him as bait to score. So that would have been proven badly later on in the story. Now, in terms of Bao and Igaguri, this would have been really bad for whoever went down there, which would have been Kunigami and Reo, because Bao is not going to lose to Kunigami and Reo. Even though it's just because they needed 3 people to do it. Actually, that's actually a good question. Could Kunigami and Reo, because if Shido could probably beat them alone, I'm pretty sure Barou could have, because I don't think Igaguri did much, and I think Igaguri would have just been serving Barou, similar to how Naohaya did, and I do not believe Kunigami and Reo would be strong enough to defeat him either. And for the sake of the storyline, I cannot have Igaguri going. Do we do this? Let me know, chat. Do you think it's the right decision to make Kunigami and Reo beat him? I don't think so, because this is tough. They would probably try to trap him, but at the same time, their tactic to stopping Bao only works because Chigiri was there for speed. Even if Kunigami tried to, Bao would have just, and Reo would have, I think, since Igaguri is such a small fry, similar to Naohaya and Team X, Bao wouldn't have felt pressured that Igaguri would have scored, so it meant that he would have definitely passed to him. So I do see Bao working with Igaguri just a little bit, only when he's fully pressured, because when he was fully pressured against Isagi and Nagi, he did pass, and even in the first game on the BlueLock story, he did pass, so he is capable of passing. It's just, I feel like with Isagi and Nagi, since he lost to them just prior, I feel like he would have been really pissed, so he wouldn't have passed to any of them, since they could actually score off of his passes, which would have made him not the most valuable person on the field. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, bye-bye Kunigami. So I mean, bye-bye Reo, because in this story, Bao wanted Kunigami more when they beat them in the original timeline, which means Bao, Kunigami, and Igaguri would have collected people like Corona and I forgot the last dude's name, Tetsu or Sakura or whatever his name is. Yeah. Okay, I need to start picking up the story because I took a lot of time explaining why Bao's team would have won that match. So heading into the World 5, like I said, Rin wouldn't have scored in this original timeline because it took Isagi's distraction for them to get a goal. But at the same time, I feel like Bachira or Tokimitsu or someone would have probably been able to make a close enough goal, because they only started taking things seriously when they scored. But at the same time, some teams didn't score, which means that if you're not good enough, you won't score. Now, with Shido being way better than Bao in this original timeline, teaming up with Nagi, Chigiri, I'm pretty sure Zantetsu would have been the last person they took. Or no, it would have been Cure, because I don't think they would have picked up Zantetsu in a 3v3 at the time, because they would have actually never faced Rin, which means they would have never fallen down. So it means they would have probably picked up Kiora. With those 5 instinct talents over freaking Barou's team with Nagi, I'm pretty sure Shido would have scored. And this changes a lot, because that means coming out of the second selection and into the third selection, Shido would actually be the only person who would have scored against the World 5, which means Rin would have been number 2 and Shido would have been number 1. Which, if it wasn't for the fact that Shido has no chemistry with anybody, he would have been BlueLock's ace heading into the U20 World Cup. But this would not be the case. I'll keep the third selection matches the same because Shido and Rin are still teaming up, and I don't think anything needs to change, except for the fact that Kunigami would definitely be taking what's his name, Isagi's places, and Naohaya would definitely be taking AERO'S places, as Naohaya is a big Nagi fan. And Naohaya would have not known who Rin was at the time. So yeah, those are the only changes, because Isagi and AERO would be in the wild card.
The starting 11 would be similarly, except that Bachura would be an offensive midfielder instead of Isagi, and I would take Kurona as left striker back, as Isagi's role was to maximize Itoshi Win's performance and coexist with him, which goes up in Bachura's alley, as he was the one who helped him score against the World 5 in the first place, and his monster would be of great help in the up front, as he did nothing on defense in the original manga. Now in this version, instead of choosing Shido, Sei would obviously choose the Barou lion, trying to tame him down by his fangs. This would lead to Shido staying on the BlueLock team, but won't be a starter, as Onyx stated in the video that I'll just play the footage over. So
as a player, I feel like the starting lineup for the BlueLock 11 would remain exactly the same. Ego himself stated in chapter 109 that if Shido were to have one of his violent outbursts in the middle of the match, he would most certainly get red carded, putting the BlueLock 11 at a severe disadvantage. Not to mention that throughout all of the BlueLock 11 tryout matches, not even for a single moment did Rin, the heart of the BlueLock 11, have a chemical reaction with Shido. Ego even goes as far as to say that there is not a single person in BlueLock that would be able to handle the egoist Shido Ryusei. However, Ego did mention that if things were going south in the game, that he was saving Shido to be Rin's replacement as a wild joker, a player that could turn the tide of the match single-handedly if the BlueLock 11 found themselves at a pinch. However, we know that this never happened because Shido ended up playing for the U20 team. However, just because the BlueLock 11 had the same starting lineup as before doesn't mean...
So we would have the U20 scene where Bao wouldn't really make a scene like Shido did, but he would just trash talk Sendo for being a weak striker compared to him. He wouldn't really give up his spot because he's not going to give up his spot. Sendo's not going to give up his spot. And Japan did not want BlueLock to get shine, so they would obviously try and hide Barou the best way they could, because it's sarcasm, am I right? Now the first half of the game would go nearly the same, since Bao and Shido rode the bench, but Isagi is in the wildcard, and Kunigami is not, and Bachura, like I said earlier, would take his role and Kurona would be starting. Rin would pass the ball to Bachura and he would immediately start cooking. Hayate would be the first problem that arises for Bachura, but he would get trapped, and in the original he passes it to Isagi, but now there's no Isagi. He would see that Teru's right in front and would pass it to Yukimiya, and we would see the birth of a chemical reaction between Bachura and Yukimiya, both breaking through Nero and the left side of the defense, as Yukimiya would try to get a gyro shot, but IQ would show why you need to invest in his stocks. Oh man. So then we would get to see that by stopping it, he would get it to Itoshi Sei, who tests Sendo to score, but he misses, and Sei catches the rebound to score the first goal, making it 1-0. Now, since Isagi wasn't involved in the first goal for the BlueLock team, we would see Nagi get a goal back to make it 1-1. As Ego stated in chapter 118, Yoichi Isagi is essential for Rin Itoshi's awakening, and even Rin confirms it by saying this warped relationship benefits them both. The game would resume, and even Yoichi Isagi is the one who made Rin awaken flow state. So Ego was right. At the 30-minute mark, Rin would ask his brother that, don't I get a hello? And he would try to get the ball back for his team, but Sei would bait him out, making him draw out his right leg and blitzes past him. Rin would catch up to him immensely fast, declaring a sibling war. Rin tries to get the ball back, but Sei keeps it protected with his right leg and passes him again with a block turn. Rin would try and catch up again, but Sei would use his shoulder block to push himself away from Rin. Literally, oh no, I made this really sad. Then he hits him with a nutmeg with that 3-year deja vu effect. Now finally, Sei has finally broken through the midfield. Sei tries to get the ball to Sendo for an assist, but Watchdog Nico was having that no-nonsense defense and sends it to Karasu, who attempts to break down the U20 defense, but utilizing Otoya and Shiguri, to get himself an open shot, but he doesn't calculate the fact that say a freaking Toshi would read that play like a children's book and send that ball further than Kaiser's Magnus impact field, but it lands straight to Rin, who would land a devastating Trivela to make it 2-1. Psych! IQ would be there. Rin wouldn't have Isagi to distract IQ from getting the ball to his advantage. Since IQ took on the fact that Isagi and Rin were very linked up, he had to watch out for both of them. Here, he only has to watch out for Rin. Meanwhile, Batra is there in this game. Batra does not have that presence that Isagi does, and reaction with Rin that he does as well. Now, we would get to see Rin miss, and Bachira would see an opening to break through the defense since IQ was with Rin, and with no IQ, Bachira would probably cook the U20 defense to score since Sendo didn't have that defensive mindset of an awakening just yet. This would give BlueLock the lead 2-1. This deficit and Sei's words would finally light a fire under the U20 team, with all of them pressing for an equalizer, which in turn would make the BlueLock 11 resort to plan B per Rin's orders. Corona and Bachira would press Kitsuna Zato, and here's the difference. Here, they would actually rip the ball off of him since Corona is much faster than Isagi at this point of the story. So he would work with Bachira to move up the ball, blissing everyone down, trying to get past the U20 iron wall. So they would have a triangle chemical reaction with Seishu and Nagi joining in the fray, as Nagi was the one to stay up front per Rin's orders. And with Nero and Aiku both waiting on Bachira, he would have to give it up to Corona. And since he was free to move, more free than Nagi, he would try to pass it to a right open Nagi, who fakes out the ride to perform a two-stage freaking body, but freaking Itoshi Sei again gets the ball to stop and rescue them. The reason why Sei was the first to get back was because when he did shoot in the original canon, Isagi and Bachira were behind him. But in this version of the story, Sei has no one behind him. So it means Sei would just track down the ball because Sei was the closest outside of the box besides Isagi and Bachira. So the game would end 2-1 at halftime. Now, we would get to the original events where Rin would have been crying, reminiscing about Sei, but that's not a backstory story today. U20 team would be in despair, trying to figure out how to survive, and Sei would say he's going home. The BlueLock team would be in high morals, and then Bao would be pissed, about to say something, but IQ says, "I'm sorry, we were weak. I was the one who gave the bet. And now that I know that, we have one last card to play, and his name is Shorei Barou." And IQ would be hesitant about this because he knows Barou from the Nationals, so he would have really not wanted to. But with the fact that this was his last chance to keep Sei Itoshi on the team, he would do it. Now that we have Barou entering the pitch, let's talk about how the hell this duo would work. So we first of all have to analyze the differences between Shido and Barou. For Barou, first of all, his charging skill is insane, as he just bursted through two defenders to score his goal in the U20 match. One of them being Neo, whose only good feature was being his strength. And I believe in terms of pure strength, Barou has the edge over Shido. For the previous feat mentioned, Bao's leadership is also underrated, as after he scored the second goal for the Ubers team, he made the whole team have a stronger edge, and being the #1 hard-headed egoist will bring a new edge to this U20 team. His heel flicks, chop feints, and other stuff that Shido can or possibly can't do. There's so many advantages to having Barou over Shido. And Barou has something similar to Isagi, which is adaptability. Not as great as Isagi, but he has the terms to actually improve during games, unlike Shido, who only gets excited by the flow, but that will only increase his shooting power and his offensive awareness. Barou, on the other hand, can increase his midfield, offensive, and defensive abilities with his flow state. He has possibly one of the top 3 best flow states in BlueLock. So now, I didn't even need to talk about his defense because U20 is only known for their iron wall before Sei Itoshi joined the team for a game. Now, let's talk about how this translates to the pitch. The game would start and Sei would pass it to a charging Barou, who would be cut off by Chiguri. Keep in mind, in this point of the story, Chiguri doesn't really know about Barou unless he really kept a keen eye on him in the trials arc. But thanks to Wei and Kunigami knowing him from teaming up with him in the second selection, since they beat him and Igaguri, we would have a situation where Barou could potentially be dispossessed, and he wouldn't pass it to Sendo. Instead, he would use his frontal dribbling to get past Chiguri. But like Sansetsu did in the second selection, Chiguri would catch up to him without directly pressing him. Sei wouldn't implement this plan of Sendo trailing down Barou as he did with Shido in the original canon, because Shido was a passer. Barou is not, so he wouldn't even need to waste his time with it. And Barou did not conquer his no passing state unless he is comfortable with it, like how he usually does in the first selection because he did not meet Hiragi in this point of the story, which means Barou would get dispossessed by Chigiri and Sei would catch it and uses a reflexive pass to get it to Barou, who charges in for a header. But keep in mind, Nico is short and weak and wouldn't be able to keep up with Barou freaking charging with a header. Golly! So Barou would header it, but Gagamaro catches it and sends the ball off to the Blue Lock 11 for a counter. The ball would land to Nagi, who would try to move forward and sends the ball to Bachira, who has a 1v1 with IQ, allowing Rin to slip by, and Bachira would assist Rin, making the game 3-1. The Blue Lock Stadium would be in shock. Everyone would be in shock as Blue Lock would have a comfortable 2-goal cushion lead. Chikyu would fall down, indicating that he is tired. This would lead him getting subbed off for Hiyori. And Nico, even though he isn't tired or got carded, would have to get out solely for the reason that he is small and weak. He would have to get subbed off for freaking Rayo, so Rayo would have a better chance of stopping Barou. Now this would get Sei Itoshi fired up because he could actually lose to his twin brother. And if he loses to Rin, his whole plan, which I think, because he's similar to Itachi Uchiha, of Rin becoming a dominant player and finding out his true ego for playing football would not work. Because if he beats his brother so easily, it wouldn't motivate Rin further, and Rin would have a downfall that Nagi's kind of having now for beating Isagi. So we would get to see Sei Itoshi play at not 100%, but trying early on in the game at the 55th minute instead of the 75th, which is 20 more minutes of Sei Itoshi gonna kick. So Sei Itoshi blitzes through Nagi and Bachira, then passes through Karasu and Otoya. Rin would try to stop him and to a no-avail as Sei does a lift off above his younger brother. What a flex! And then he would nutmeg Yukimiya, and then he would just do a heel flick past Chigiri as Nagiri uses Chigiri trapping abilities to slow down Chigiri's thought process in the second selection. So Sei would do something similar to that. Sei would pass it to Barou, but Rin would realize his play by submerging his mind with that of his brother and actually foul Barou instead of just getting the ball, because in this version Rin has never met Barou, because Barou's U20 trials match was for Team Karasu and Otoya against Team Nagi, so Rin would have never actually played against Barou, so he wouldn't have known his unpredictability state or how to defend him, which means we would get a free kick and Sei Itoshi would know how to create a goal hunter due to experience or something that would adapt to Barou. So what the plan would be was he would pass it to Sendo, and Sendo would pass it to Kitsunato, passing it to Cho, passing it to another, over and over and over and over and over and over until it passes back to Sei Itoshi, and Sei Itoshi looks like he's about to shoot or make a massive pass forward. But just like how Isagi and Hiyori fell for Karasu's ball heel flick in the PXG game, Sei would do a reverse ball heel flick to Barou, who is waiting like the lion seen through his prey in the garden of the grass in the savannah, scores a massive mid-range kick to make it 3-2. The Blue Lock 11 would try and make a move to score, but Sei Itoshi fired up with Seafood plan and make a direct pass to Barou, who's about to enter flow, and without Chigiri there would be no one to keep up with his thunder dribbling phase and heel flicks, and he would break through the midfield and defense, and then he would shoot a screamer that would get saved by Gagamaro. But one thing about Gagamaro throughout this game was that he was usually punching the ball away. There was only one time he actually caught the ball and kept it to himself, when it was Rayo was guarding him, but with no one to properly guard Barou would make him have to deflect it, and Barou would rebound that with his freaking knee to slide it in to make it 3-3. The game is equalized, the crowd would go crazy, everyone would be fired up. As for the next 5 minutes, it would be a grueling back and forth affair, and then Bachira would try to cook the whole team and score to make it 4-3 with his lots of tries, but Sendo fired up would stop it and send the ball to IQ, and IQ would get the ball to Sei, who passes it between Yukimi and Karasu, leaving them stunned as he didn't pass the ball. But another striker, Kitsuna Zato, would get his shot blocked off by Rayo. Sendo would get the rebound and shoot, but it's deflected by Nagi and Hiyori. Sei gets it, but it's cut off by Otoya. Since Isagi isn't there, he or Corona would have been the only two fast people to react to him in some circumstance, and he would pass it to IQ, but Rin deflects it, seeing what his brother was trying to do. Sei sends a corner, and Red thinks it's going to Aiko, so he marks him, but instead it goes to Barou. And with no Isagi to get in Barou's way, like he did with Shido, Barou would power through and get himself a hat trick of a header to make it 3-4. Barou! Barou! The crowd would be chanting as he has made a hat trick. The world would have known the name of Shorei Barou. So now they would get ready to commence, but the Hublood projector would be on, showing number 10 in red and number 13 in green, meaning You say Shido has finally entered the pitch, subbing in for Rin. Rin would be mad, asking Ego why the hell is he getting subbed off, and he would simply respond, we are losing, and I wanted to use my Joker card. There's no better time than now. If we lose this game, we don't exist. Fuck off. This game would continue with everyone trying to go for a counter to make it 4-4. Now, I did consider Kunigami instead of Hiyori, since Kunigami is more of an offensive presence than Hiyori in terms of striking abilities, and this team would have provided with goals from Kunigami for sure. But the problem is, Hiyori would be able to pass to Shido the way Shido likes it. Even though Ego did say that no one can tame him, Karasu has good intel on Shido, on how Shido works. And the only problem with Karasu is that he doesn't have the body to control it. But he would trust his femboy Hiyori to do that. And so they would get a ball in, and Hiyori would make an insane reflexive pass to Shido, who would make the game 4-4. The game would continue with everyone trying to get the ball into Shido again, but IQ would put extra pressure to block Shido because IQ would be the only one in an aerial circumstance to keep up with Shido. So we would get a play where Nagi tries to score, but Fukaku would luckily save it, and IQ would try to lock down Shido, but Shido kicks it up and the ball is just leaving. Shido's thinking if he should pass it to someone, but it says his cells are exploding. They're waiting to implode. They need to bust a nut in the room. So he gets a freaking reverse bicycle kick from half court, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and bust a nut inside that room to make it 5-4. With 4 minutes left of the game, it's looking like BlueLock 11 may have saved themselves and saved the whole BlueLock Corporation from going extinct. So Sei would make a play for Barou to score a mid-range shot, but Gagamaru would save it and throw it out to Nagi, and he would receive it, but IQ would deflect that at the last moment, as IQ would be very fired up. The whole team is fired up, and the whole team would be pressing forward due to IQ's orders. Sei would have more options to give, but a low ball to Barou would be perfect, and he would try to score, but Rayo would deflect it. But similar to the Uber's game, the hyena Shidou Sendo would come with the rebound to equalize the game 5-5. Tensions are rising. Everyone's pressure. The U20 trying to avoid being shamed by people who weren't even known till today, and the BlueLock Corporation trying to fight for survival and also overthrow the U20 Japan's team, as if they beat them, their names would be carved in the world for history for overthrowing these clowns. The pressure would be there. Everyone would be tense, locked in, and it would be top performance on top performance. This is because now Sei would have to play defense. Everyone would try to get the ball to Shido, but Sei can predict Shido's movements easily. As, how do I say this? Isagi had a very easy time dealing with Shido in the late minutes of the game. So with that being said, Shido would have to pass it to Nagi, and Nagi would be fired up and awakened, because without Isagi, Nagi in the second selection was very fired up, especially in the 4v4. And he would try to score, but Nayo would try to stop him, and IQ would fail as well, as IQ would have to be on Shido. With Nagi passing through Nayo, we would have Shorei Barou, and this is the part where I talked about his defensive feats getting awakened. With Barou in full-on flow state, he would be able to charge down and stop Nagi and pass the ball to itoshi Sei. And if Shido could freaking run to the shot course in the final play of the game, I'm pretty sure Barou would too. So Sei would get the ball. Everyone would be going in. Ryu would have to press full throw. We would have an instance where freaking Nagi tries to attack Sei because he was first, and then we would see Sei pass through Nagi, and then he would pass through Shido, then Bachura. Karasu would scream not to rush him, that he would buy some time, but realistically Karasu was not doing anything, and he would get cooked too. And with no win to hold back Sei, they would be done for, as they would have had to send too many men on Sei, and Sei with his final attack, knowing that it's the final attack, everyone would be getting in the pitch in the penalty box to try and get a goal in. And Ryu would be on show, like I said. Otoya and Corona would be trying to be in position to help Rayo stop Barou in case Barou gets the ball. Sei would pass it to Barou. All three of them would leap against Barou, but it goes a bit up higher than all of them would have expected. It goes to the captain, the snake, the one whose flower died but blooms again. Olivier IQ finishes it off with a header to make it 5-6. This would boost everyone's morale in their stadium as Olivier Aiku, the captain himself, saves U20 Japan from shame and wins the game for them, which means BlueLock would be cancelled. Barou and Sei would have been known around the world as the Hatrakiwa and the Prodigy himself saving U20. We would get Sendo being recognized as the ace of Japan as he saved them from even having to get a draw because he would have scored the equalizer just a few minutes ago.
The U20 match ended with IQ's header thanks to Sai's assist, meaning they won 5-6. BlueLock dies, but thanks to the power of fan service, part 3 is here. But there is a punishment still in place, being only the 14 players who touched the pitch in BlueLock will play in the NEL since those were the only players the fans saw. So 2 weeks after the best match in soccer manga history occurred, we would get the U20 players who played as well joining the 14 BlueLockers, meaning 25 players entering because Itoshi wouldn't be there. Ego would announce the lone survivor joining the wild card, being Yoriichi Isagi. If it wasn't obvious enough, Shido is in Ubers, Barou is in PXG. This time, it would be Isagi sneaking into the top 11 since he would have better specs, not as good as Kunigami but just good enough to get him in. But at this stage, he would already have his lefty shot as the point of the wildcard training was to make a noel copy man, which meant the survivor needed to acquire some ambidextrability. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Barou would actually have a starting 11 role as Nuffy wouldn't be there to bench him, and the only reason he did was because he reminded him of Big Moon. And Shido would also start because Shido would accept the role of being the successor of Snuffy and Ubers to score lots and lots of goals. We would also see Kaiser not fixated on Isagi as much as he didn't play in the exhibition match, and Isagi wouldn't be emo like Kunigami because unlike Kunigami who had to destroy himself completely for the first time in his life and becoming something he hates, Isagi has been doing this throughout his whole journey. And low-key, Isagi is an evil person. Kunigami is not. Kunigami is trying to be something he's not. Isagi, he will finally get to embody his evil personality to the fullest in that wild card training. So this is nothing new for him. With everything set in stone, it's time for the games to begin. We will start with Bastard Merchant versus Barcha, with Kaiser commencing the play. With Kaiser passing it to Ness, who passes it to Grim, who sends it to Gesner, who passes it straight to Isagi, who would use his spatial awareness to get himself in a better position than Kunigami did in canon, to get himself open for a direct lefty shot to score, making the score 1-0. Ness would get pissed that he didn't bow to Kaiser, ensuring that war would come between the factions. In the other match, Rin would use his oscillation breakthrough to blitz past the Ubers midfield and send a pass back to Charles and would position himself in the perfect spot to score. But Charles would send a pass to Rin, but it's stopped by Lorenzo. He would use his zombie dribbling to ascend up the field, with Karasu telling everyone to mark their attackers, and he would hold off Lorenzo, the biggest license to fight Kage. If you know, you know. He would blitz past Karasu and make it seem like he was going for a shot instead of a pass, but he would pass it to the zesty demon Ryusei Shido. A dragon diver header to open up the scoring for Ubers 1-0. The birth of the zombie demon duo would be born. Rin and Karasu would have imputed their plan, promising it won't happen a second time. We would resume kickoff with Rin passing it to Charles and making another one, but this time it goes a bit further than Rin, with starving lion Barou, who would dash past Rin and Lorenzo. Ryu and some other fathers would hold him long enough just for IQ to appear. He would send the ball to Lorenzo and he would run the same play and send a long pass to Shido, but it's intercepted by Karasu, who sends a pass to Charles and another one to Rin, who uses Barou as a shield to use a stealth kill shot, equalizing the game 1-1 apiece. Meanwhile, in the other game, Ness would fake out some Barcha players and send a perfect pass to Kaiser, who introduces the BlueLockers to the world's fastest swing shot in the world, Kaiser Impact, making the score 2-1 in Bastard Munchen's favor, leading to Lavino and Noah entering the pitch. Meanwhile, we would see Charles send a wicked pass to Barou, but IQ would be in front of him, but Karasu jumps for the ball, making a pass to Rin, who has Lorenzo marking him, but Barou sneaks in behind Rin and devours him to score his own goal 2-1. We cut back to the Bastard Munchen match, with Noah scoring a thunderous goal over Lavino to seal the win for Bastard Munchen 3-2, showing why he's the #1 striker. Then Ego would explain the bidding system and BlueLock TV component of the NEL. Then it would cut to the PXG versus Ubers match, with Rin scoring the final goal, making it 3-2 in PXG's favor for the win. Bastard Munchen versus Sunshine City would start with the same lineups, The Boston Munchen game would start with Isagi stealing Kaiser's ball, and then Rail catches onto him and sends the pass to Chigiri, who scores with his new 44 Golden Panthers Knight, making the score 1-0 in their favor. We cut over to the other game with Shido scoring a goal, making it 1-0 for AERO'S. The match restarts and Bachira passes it to Otoya, but Nico blitzes him and sends the ball to Sendo, who attempts to shoot but is stopped by Derai. But Shido would pick up the rebound and score a second goal for them, making it 2-0 in their favor. In the other game, Kaiser had just scored a devastating Kaiser impact from Stephen Curry range to make the score 1-1. Isagi would then figure out metavision from dissecting that play thoroughly. We would then see Manshine City restart, but Isagi is there to stop Nagi, and he starts using metavision to start making a two-man team with Corona to cook the whole Manshine team. And with better shooting specs, when Kaiser would come to interfere, Isagi is still able to make that shot, making the score 2-1 in Boston Munchen's favor. Meanwhile, in the other game, Nico sends a pass to Shido to finish off the game, but Moro barely saves it, and Bachira receives the ball, and Rail receives the ball in the other match. And Bachira nutmegs past Sendo, and Rail passes it to Nagi, who does a heel flick over Ali and Grim to Rail, and Bachira does a heel flick over Nico, and uses Ginga to lure out Abdi and Rico. Rail dribbles past Corona and making Boston's defense all get ready to jump the duo. Meanwhile, Bachira dribbles past Jago and Perron. Rail beats Mensa and sends a pass to Nagi and sends one back to Rail. With Birkenstock on him, Nagi traps the ball, but Isagi and Kaiser are there. Bachira has finally passed through the fodder, but Lorenzo is there as well. Nagi sends the pass back to Rail and one past Isagi to challenge him. Lorenzo would try to steal it from Bachira, but Bachira slid the ball to his left. Lorenzo would use his insane leg specs to keep up. Bachira would then boost the tempo to use a double gear touch to glitch past Lorenzo, but Lorenzo would still be right on him, leaving Bachira in shock, forcing him to send a heel flick pass to Nagi, who receives it and does his first feint and does another one over Isagi to Lala, who has Ryu on him, and passes it to Nagi, who receives a third feint on Kaiser, sending the ball in the air as it reaches Bachira with Lorenzo still on him, but fakes a shot on himself and sends it to Nagi, who fakes out Isagi again, sending the ball in the air, and it reaches Otoya, who's snuck by IQ thanks to Bachira's distraction, and sends a final pass to Bachira, and him and Nagi jumps in the air and scores a 5-fold revolutionary volley and an epic chemical bee monster both at the same time, making it 2-1 in AERO'S favor and 2-2 equalizer in the Manshine vs Boston Munchen game. This goal would leave Nagi in a funk of not knowing what to do now that he has beaten Isagi and Bachira, with hope that they can complete a comeback against AERO'S. Chris Prince and Noah would then have entered the game. The game would restart, and then the game would continue with Kaiser facing off against Chris in a 1v1, using a double touch to get past him, but Chris is still there. Then he uses a slide to protect the ball in his grasp, making a vortex that no one could enter. Kaiser would then use a double touch nutmeg, and Chris would immediately respond with a heavy shoulder block. Noah would come in trying to get the ball, but Rail gets there first, and Chugi would get there aiming to use his 44-degree zone, but is cut off by Yukimiya. Chugi does a feint cut to get in to try and score, but Kaiser stops him just in time. Chris would then get the ball being cut off by Noah, but was prepared for it with his new knuckleball shot that he doesn't even know where it's going. Isagi and Gagamo would team up, giving us the iconic Phil Jones memes in BlueLock. The game would go the same as in canon, with Yukimiya blitzing the whole Manshine defense, attempting to score with his gyro shot, but is stopped by Chris. Then we would get Rail's fake shot turned into a pass for Nagi's black hole trap, only to be stopped by Isagi, who makes his legendary chemical reaction run with Noah and Corona, but is stopped by Kaiser. But Isagi uses his sunken ship Yukimiya to score the final goal, 3-2, saving Yukimiya's career deposit. On the other hand, it shows Shido completing the hat-trick with a dragon drive to win the game 3-1 for AERO'S. Isagi falls down 10 hours later, waking up to see the new rankings and revealing that the number 1 person is the one who sent him to hell, Ryusei Shido. Isagi would ask for the recordings, getting ready to go get revenge on the demon. The Boston Munchen vs AERO'S game would kick off like in canon, with Kaiser immediately going for a Kaiser impact, but Lorenzo is there to stop him and dribbles past the whole Boston Munchen team and passes it very high in the air for Shido to use a dragon driver to score the first goal of the match. Meanwhile, in the other match, Shigui would dribble past Barou, Karasu, and Charles to get a 44-degree panther shot to score in Munchen's favor 1-0. On the other side, Corona would then send a pass to Isagi, who was pressed by Lorenzo, taking into account both of Isagi's legs since he saw the lefty shot in Barcha's match. So Isagi would then turn around, leaving Ness in shock with a direct left back heel shot, leaving everyone in shock, equalizing the game 1-1. Charles would then pass to Rin, who would score a menacing mid-range shot to equalize the game 1-1. Sendo would send a pass to Shido, but it would be intercepted by Isagi, who was ripped off by Nico, who brings the ball up and passes it to Shido, who passes it back to Nico, who passes it back to Shido, who snuck through the wall to score a devastating Dragon Driver to score his second goal of the match 2-1. Utilizing a sort of predator shot, instead of having Shido shoot from beyond the wall, he sneaks in through the wall, and with his unrivaled specs of flexibility, except for Gagamon, he would score an easy goal. We would then see Grim throw the ball to Ness. Without Kunigami to intercept him, he and Ness would trade passes, trying to get the ball to Kaiser, who has Lorenzo locked on him. Nico would come to steal the ball from Ness, but that's what Isagi was counting on as he starts trading his 1-2s with Corona, and would actually be able to beat Aiku this time since he has better control over his lefty shot to score his second goal of the match, equalizing the game 2-2. There wouldn't be any master subs because Sendo wouldn't hurt himself trying to stop Kaiser like in canon, but however, further in the game, Corona stamina dims, and this would also be where Fukaku-gen comes in too. But the game would end off in canon with Hiyori assisting Isagi with the no-look shot 3-2 at the end of the day. This would mean Isagi would get a hat-trick to get his revenge against Shido. Now that's how you write a revenge story. We would also not see Kaiser receiving a bid from La Real, as he wouldn't have scored in the whole game at all, leaving him completely shattered. In the other game, we would see Chigui trying to get another 44-degree panther shot, but it's intercepted by Charles, and he sends a pass to Rin, but Rayo calls out to Nagi, who fails to stop Rin as Rin traps it and scores to make it 3-1. But he didn't score a hat-trick in canon, because Barou is in Shido and he would have scored a goal. Nagi would receive back-to-back quotes from Rin and Barou. Now we would get to PXG versus FC Barcha. Rin would send the ball to Cho, who passes it to Charles, who sends a no-interval pass to Rin, who scores to make it 1-0. Then we would see Barou and Karasu sub in. Bachira would pass the ball to Otoya, but Karasu would dispossess him and sends the ball to Charles, who sends it to a storming lion header as Barou would score, making it 2-0. Meanwhile, it's 2-1 in Uber's favor as Agi has the ball. Chris tells Agi to send Nagi the ball, which he reluctantly does. Nagi receives it and blitzes through Ayu and Nico, but is shocked by Lorenzo. Nagi freezes until Reo tells him to just shoot it. Nagi does, but it's only to be stopped by IQ. Ayu would send the ball to Nico, who sends it to Shido and sends it back to Nico, and now back to Lorenzo again, who sends it for an aerial attack to end the game 3-1 with a dragon header, giving Shido his second hat-trick in the NEL, making him the undeniable goal-scoring king with 10 goals. Nagi would go to him for the advice, and Shido would say the following: "You're not even explosive as you were in the U20 match, let alone the second or third selection. What's with that? But you asked me what makes me play soccer, right? It's a biological necessity to prove my existence through scoring goals." Nagi would look at him confused. Shido would continue saying he wouldn't expect Nagi to understand, but he would give him a piece of advice, saying the same thing he told Isagi when he sent him to hell. "People who can't destroy themselves can never create explosions. Unlike the cowlick guy who was able to do it, it seems you just have been pretending to play soccer." Shido would then walk off to go celebrate with his team. Meanwhile, in the other match, Charles would send a killer pass to Barou, who would smash it in with another header to win the game for PXG 3-2 against FC Barcha, setting the stage for the championship match between PXG versus Bastard Munchen. The lineup would be similar to the original story, except Raichi's not here and Kiora as well, so Yukimiya would keep his spot. PXG wouldn't have Nanase, Tokimitsu, or Zantetsu, or as they didn't qualify for the NEL. Cho would play left wing with a bunch of fathers taking Tokimitsu and Zantetsu's places. Barou would dive straight into Kaiser in the beginning of the match, and Kaiser would fake him out and send the ball back to Ness, and slip by Barou while he was distracted. Ness's pass would get intercepted by Karasu, who gets pressed by Hiyori, who tries to get the ball, but Karasu makes a back pass immediately to Charles, who makes a deadly pass. Isagi marks win, but it goes higher for the Lion, who gets a close range shot but is deflected by Yukimiya's immersive speed. The ball would be sent in the air and Mensa clears it to Ness, who starts trading passes with Kaiser, who rushes through Karasu and Cho to try and score with a Kaiser impact, but Rin stops him in his tracks and starts an oscillation to break through the whole Bastard Munchen team. He works with Cho to get himself open, but Kaiser gets in his way, but he just drags the ball into a better position, and then Isagi gets in his way, but then Rim grabs him by the collar to score, but that wouldn't be enough time for Hiyori to stop his shot. Karasu would get the ball and do a straight pass between Mensa and Birkenstock for Barou to get the shot, but Gagamal gets the ball first, annoying Barou. People must be wondering why Barou and Charles aren't linking up as well as Shido and Charles. It's because Shido and Charles is pure reflexivity, just like Shai and Shido. Barou doesn't have that flexibility and reflexes that Shido does to make him score those goals, so Barou wouldn't really work well with Charles. Gagamal would send the ball up to Hiyori, who was caught lacking by Charles. Charles passes it this time to Rin, as he wouldn't be playing favorites this time around, but Yukimiya and Ali would be in his way to slow down Rin's shot course for Gagamal to make a massive save. Gagamal would send the ball, but Cho would receive it and send it to Rin, but Hiyori stops it and passes it to Yukimiya, who passes it to Isagi to complete the 2-gun volley and give Bastard Munchen the lead 1-0. Yukimiya would explain his reason for assisting him being that he owed Isagi for assisting him in the Munchen match, and now they are even, so now he declares it's every man for themselves from now on. Rin and Charles would resume kickoff. Charles would ask Loki to sub him out, which distracts Rin, allowing Yukimiya and Hiyori to dispossess him. However, the ball lands to Charles but is dispossessed by Barou, and he is livid as he witnessed Isagi evolve past him and is tired of not playing like a king thanks to Rin, and tired of having his plays and goals designed by Charles. He would take charge to design his own play. He would do a heel flick to get past Ness. Grim and Ali would come to press Barou. Barou would pass it to Charles, calling him a limb to support him and tell him to give a super pass. The whole team besides Rin would be his arms and legs, making passes and plays for Barou, believing in Barou's terrifying ego. And Charles' response would be, "It's turning me on!" Yukimiya and Ness try to press Barou, but he sends a back pass to Charles. Yukimiya and Ness would try to press Barou, but he sends a back pass to Charles. But Barou would run past them and Charles would send a killer pass to him, with Ness and Yukimiya still on his tail. Barou would do a thunder chop to fake them out and then take a shot, but Hiyori deflects it and Karasu gets it, with Mensa and Birkenstock trying to press him. But he sends it back to Charles, with Rin running to get ready to receive it. Charles passes it, but then Barou takes it, saying he finally has enough. But Barou takes it and looks at Isagi, saying, "So you finally came, loser." And Isagi saying, "Yes, I will crush you, king." And Kaiser saying, "Beat it, Isagi, he's mine." Barou moves around them and figures out the perfect shot course and performs the double nutmeg through Isagi and Kaiser to equalize the game 1-1 for PXG. Noel would then state they need to make a change to benefit Isagi's system to finish off this match, as it's been doing way better than Kaiser's system. So Grim would come out and Corona would come in. So Hiyori on the left wing and Corona as the right back. Kaiser and Ness would start to bulldoze through PXG, as Ness would send a final pass to Kaiser Impact, who would try to score a Kaiser Impact Magnus, but it misses badly. Renoir sends a goal kick and Ness is the first to get it and headers it to Kaiser, who stops the ball to try and get a Kaiser Impact Magnus, but Rin and Isagi stop him, and the ball is sent up in the air, with Barou receiving it and starts dashing, looking to get his second goal, but he is stopped again by the triple pass of Yukimiya, Ali, and Corona. Corona sends the ball to Isagi. Kaiser tries to steal the ball from Isagi with his last attempt of staying the Emperor, but slides off the floor to the dirt, literally. Isagi would get pressed by Karasu, leading to him passing it to Corona and a pass to Hiyori, which is stolen by Kaiser, who does a 1-2 with Ali, but Rin stops him in his tracks. Corona and Ali would stop Rin again. Isagi receives the ball and sends it to Corona, who gets stopped by Cho, who gets dispossessed by Kaiser, who dribbles it through Chappa, but is stopped by Karasu and Rin. Hiyori would receive the ball and sends it to Corona, who sends a final pass to Isagi, who is stopped by Charles, with the ball landing to Ness. Ness sends a pass to Kaiser, who scores in a similar fashion to the Munchen game, making it 2-1. He wouldn't ignore Ness's pass this time because Kiora was there, and the only other good passers that was there was on Isagi's side or an individualistic player like Yukimiya. And thanks to the change room chat, Kaiser would know not to let the ball go to Yukimiya as he wouldn't get the ball back. Ness would start lacing Kaiser, but Kaiser tells him to shush as their duo contract has now been terminated, and Kaiser would tell him to bark at another tree. Kickoff would resume with Rin passing it to Cho and Isagi pressing him, so he tries to pass the ball to Rin, who is stopped by Kaiser. Kaiser gets dispossessed by Barou, leading to Isagi getting the ball, leading to Isagi versus Rin, which ends up badly for Rin as he's sent sliding. Cho steps in to help, but Isagi passes the ball to Corona, who starts a 1-2 with Isagi. However, Rin stops Corona in his tracks as Rin's transformation begins. Rin blitzes through Ali and then uses Yukimiya's 1v1 weapon to destroy him, and then does a perfect rainbow heel flick to get past Hiyori. He blitzes through Mensa. Isagi tries to tackle Rin, but then he realizes he is not that guy. Rin and Kaiser start dueling, but then Isagi intervenes and Ness gets the ball away from Rin and lands to Charles. And it lands to Charles, who passes it to Barou, but Kaiser stops the pass, who rushes through Hiyori and Corona and jumps back to receive a long pass from Cho. With Corona and Ali in his way, he fakes the shot and does a 180 turn around Hiyori to shoot, but stops and tells everyone to offer up their lives for the sake of his goal. But a certain lion intercepts the pass and used Rin as a shield to score a predator shot. But Isagi, Kaiser, and Gagama would all team up just to save that shot. But it lands to Whale in the other game, who sends a super pass who fakes out Hayate and looks to see Charles, who had been fired up thanks to Rin, does a Rabona cross to Rin and Barou. Rin runs for the ball, with the ball going above Akatsuki, and Nagi looks to see Isagi, who tries to stop him. With Barou close near, but Rin jumps in the air and Nagi does so with his free stage fake volley on the right. They both score insane volleys, equalizing the game 2-2, and for Nagi winning his game 3-1. Nagi and Whale get ready to leave as they look up at the monitor showing Loki and Noah arrive in the pitch for the master sub time. But Noah brings someone else, not Igaguri because he is eliminated, but the only original U20 Japan member on this team, Neotepe. He would come in for a tired Corona and Noah for Ali. Noah and Isagi trade passes with Loki, speed rushing Isagi to steal the ball from him, who uses God Warp to transcend past Hiyori and send a killer pass to Rin to finish off the game, but Nero comes in with his lightning speed reflexes to steal the ball from Rin and sends it to Noah. Barou and Charles would then press Noah, but he sends it to Kaiser, who sends it back to Noah. Isagi wants to join Noah, but sends it to Kaiser, revealing the only reason he came to the NEL was for Kaiser, who blitzes through everyone to score the final goal, again showing why he is the #1 striker. But Loki instantly stops the shot, which lands on the ground perfectly for Kaiser to complete the Kaiser Impact Magnus. Kaiser takes it, but Loki stops it again, calling it too slow. Karosu receives the ball and headers it to Barou, who gets triple pressed, so he passes it to Charles and tells him to give him the ball back. Kaiser intercepts the pass, but it goes instead to Rin, who rushes through Birkenstock, Hiyori, and Mensa. Nero comes in trying to get the ball again, but Rin is ready this time. He uses Nero's speed against him and scores a vicious goal to win the game for PXG 3-2. This would make PXG the NEL champions.